She was a belly dancing star who was in the prime of her life, and he was the young gentleman who she chose to spend her afternoon with. Who would be the person to take their lives in such a horrific manner? Today we will be discussing the unsolved murders of Dolly Baksh and TEJPAUL Singh 42 years later, and we're still no closer to an answer. Dolly Amanda Baksh was born in 1960, and she was the sister of a well-known musician, Sammy Baksh. So having grown up around music, there was no surprise when Dolly started showing interest in music. She started dancing at the age of 5, and it would be at the age of 8 when she would make her first stage appearance, and her family supported her. They loved to see her dancing and enjoying herself on the stage, so they encouraged her along this path. By the age of 12, Dolly was now a full-fledged dancer, and she was one of the performers at Kaieteur 72, which was held in Guyana. So Dolly was known for two types of dancing. She did the traditional classic Indian dances, and she was also known for doing sensual belly dances. And because of these types of dances that she did, she gained a lot of fans and admirers. Persons were just so in awe of what she was able to do at such a young age. Dolly's dancing would even allow her to get a part in a locally made film by the name of Operation Makunaima. Now, as she got older, of course, dancing was not everything in her life. She still did gain her education. And when she wrote the GCE O-levels examinations, she passed with 9 subjects. And she went on to pass 2 subjects at the A-level examinations. Now, even though Dolly was a dancer and she had eventually become a member of the People's Culture Corps, her main ambition in life was to eventually become a doctor. Now, her path to achieving this dream job, she did apply for the University of Guyana and she was accepted. So her future plans were falling into place and everything in her life just seemed to be perfect. At the age of 19, Dolly was now a tall, beautiful, fair-skinned girl who had gained a lot of attraction at fairs and stage shows, because she is a dancer and all these fans would come out to see her perform. Fans and admirers would even describe her as Dolly, the girl who danced like she has no bones. So I guess she was the Shakira before Shakira was Shakira. So because she was described as having no bones, this is what made her belly dancing so mesmerizing to so many people. The People's Culture Corps was known to perform nationally and internationally, so it would come to no surprise when they were asked to perform at the President's residence on September the 15th, 1979. And that was in honor of the visiting president of Guinea, Ahmed Sékou Touré. But no one would know that this would be Dolly's last dance. On Monday, September the 17th, 1979, Dolly told her mother that she was going to borrow some books, and she left her family's Campbell Avenue home a little after midday to go and borrow these books. But sadly, she would never return. After leaving home, Dolly would meet with her male friend, 23-year-old TEJPAUL Singh. Now, we don't know much information on TEJPAUL, which is sad. That's the one downfall of this case and of reports of this case. A lot of persons, nobody actually reported on TEJPAUL. There was just so much focus on Dolly because she was well known. So that is the one downfall of this case. But what we do know about TEJPAUL was that he was 6 feet tall and he was a mechanical engineer student at the Guyana Technical Institute. So it was reported that TEJPAUL left his East Coast home early in the morning to go to classes, and it was after his classes that he met with Dolly, and the two were later seen walking along the Bel Air seawall. Now, later in the day, around 4 p.m., a lot of calls started going into the police and the ambulance, and they were reporting that there were 2 persons who were injured along the Kaieteur foreshore. The seawalls, a little bit out from the actual seawalls, there were 2 persons who were just laying on the ground injured. When the police and the ambulance got to the scene, they found a young Indian female and a young Indian male, both laying in bushes. The young man was sadly pronounced dead on the scene. But the young lady was in a semi-conscious state, so she was rushed to the Georgetown Hospital where she received medical attention. Even though the doctors and the nurses tried so hard to save her life, this young lady would not make it. She would die due to her injuries. These two young people were later identified as Dolly Baksh and TEJPAUL Singh. The news of their deaths would break the hearts of their families and the hearts of the fans of Dolly. When the police and the ambulance got to the scene, both Dolly and TEJPAUL were fully clothed, but they did see that both persons had injuries to their heads. When autopsies were done, it was confirmed that both Dolly and TEJPAUL died from fractured skulls, and the weapon that was used was found at the scene of the crime, and it was a very large and heavy green heart wood. At the time, the case was led by Crime Chief Cecil Skip Roberts. And even though at the time there were reports and speculation stating that Dolly was sexually assaulted, Crime Chief Roberts stated that there was no evidence to claim that the motive was murder or rape. So he immediately dismissed those two as being the motives of the deaths. But at the end of the day, the question remains, who killed Dolly and TEJPAUL and why? So at the time, there was a slew of attacks that were happening along the sea walls by someone only known as the Sea Wall Stalker. Prior to the deaths of Dolly and TEJPAUL, a young rank from the Guyana People's Militia was attacked and killed under similar circumstances. Around the same time, a young lady was attacked and left unconscious at the same place where the rank was killed. And luckily, persons were passing by and saw her, and they were able to save her from the incoming tides. So the reason why some persons thought that the Sea Wall Stalker was responsible for the deaths of Dolly and TEJPAUL was because that immediately after their deaths, there were no more attacks along the sea walls by this Sea Wall Stalker. So a lot of persons thought that, okay, maybe the person got their main victims and that was it. At the time, the police only made one arrest. We don't know who that person is. We don't know how they were able to set up a alibi, but they were eventually released, and that is all we know. So no name has been released as to who this person was, but that was the only arrest that police had made in regards to the deaths of Dolly and TEJPAUL. So remember, I just said that after the deaths of Dolly and TEJPAUL, the Sea Wall Stalker just ceased to commit any more attacks. Well, many other persons did not believe the Sea Wall Stalker is responsible, and this even included the family of TEJPAUL. Now, one of his relatives stated that he believes, or he or she, I don't know whether it's a male or female, but he or she believes that it was somebody who was close to Dolly that was responsible for their deaths, or that had a hand in the deaths of Dolly and TEJPAUL. Now, the reason why this person believes that it's somebody close to Dolly who's responsible is because, according to them, the individual who they're assuming is responsible went into hiding for several days after their deaths. Now, another theory that arose was that Dolly was murdered because a politician was interested in her and made a move on her, and she denied him. And so because she denied this person, that's why she was killed. But we don't have any evidence or anything. That was just one of the theories that was going around back in the day. Another theory is that the opposing political party was responsible for their deaths, but then again, there is still no evidence. So there's so many hearsay. There's a lot of hearsay when it comes to the deaths of Dolly and TEJPAUL, but no physical, like there's no hard evidence to say, yeah, this is why these persons were killed. And what I am hoping is that their cases are reopened and that their killer or killers is found, because it's been 42 years now. A lot of things has happened in 42 years, and one of the things that has not happened is that their murder has been solved. There was even a speculation that stated that Dolly wasn't killed the Monday, but the Saturday of her last dance. But the same person that's speculating that she was killed on the Saturday said that she was beheaded. And we know that she was not beheaded. She was beaten with a wood. But what we have to remember is that these are all theories. And until there is actual evidence to prove how Dolly and Tejpaul were killed, or who killed Dolly and Tejpaul. That's all these will ever be, theories. Two young people lost their lives for reasons we may never know. And even though the cold case unit exists, I wonder, will they ever solve their case? I'm asking and I'm pleading with you, if you know anything that can lead to the solving of the case of Dolly and Tejpaul, please contact the Commissioner of Police at 226-3487 or 624-1386. Both Dolly and Tejpaul had their entire lives ahead of them, but that was snatched from them. It has been 42 years since their bright lights has dimmed. I honestly have no idea if their parents are still alive. But what I do know is that the day that they were taken, the families of Dolly and Tejpaul, their lives changed forever. Dolly Baksh and Tejpaul Singh. They may be gone, but they will never be forgotten.